talk about education. And my first rule always is, stay in school. You know, I used to teach in LaSalle, and I always have this introductory lecture. And one day a student comes in with an earphone here and listening to the iPod. I was talking about the importance of education. And this kid says, Miss, Steve Jobs was a dropout in college. Steve Jobs is a great guy. So I don't think it's important to stay in school. And so I asked him, I approached him and said, are you a genius? And he said, I don't think so, miss. Do you think you can make an iPod or a Mac before you're 40? I'm not sure, miss. Can you give me a brilliant idea on what you're going to contribute to the world right now? And I said, that's precisely why you stay in school. Because only 1% maybe of this world are composed of geniuses who are going to create Macs and iPods before they're 40. So for most of us, normal people, we need education, and that's our best bet. It's our foot inside the door. And believe it or not, when you start working, what is the first question? What is the first thing you write in your resume? Saan po kayo nagtapos ng pag-aaral? So stay in school. And another important thing I have to remind you is that the name of your school, don't let it matter too much. When I qualified in college for the University of the Philippines, Diliman, my father, who graduated from a university in Cebu, told me, be careful, because people from UP, mga hambog mo. Who understands what hambog is? Okay? Mayayabang ang mga taga-UP, dahil taga-UP kayo, kayo na pinakamagaling. Hindi po yung totoo. Maraming magaling sa UP. Dito nga yung kasama ko sa dorm, at mag-speak din siya today. Maraming magaling, pero it's not the school that dictates brilliance. You dictate how brilliant you will be. Okay? So, sa mga conference, yung mga taga-UP, okay, taga-UP kayo, taga-Ateneo, okay, magmayabang ha. At yung mga hindi taga-UP, you're also equally good. And it only needs hard work. So stay in school. But the second rule is, don't stay in school forever. Okay? The first speaker said, you are student leaders, not leader students. Marami akong kakilala, 7 years na sa universidad. Hindi pa rin gumagraduate. Nagkatrabaho niya kami, nasa school pa rin. So ako parang, huy, ba't parang rally ng rally? Tapusin na pag-aaral niyo. And it's a matter of prioritization. There's nothing wrong with attending rallies. If that's your way of objecting to the injustices of this country, then do it. But you have to focus also on your education because you are student leaders. Now, I was looking at the CHED website last night and I realized that for who from Siliman here, your tuition fee is around 42,000 pesos. Okay, that's per semester. Every semester that you overstay in college costs your parents 42,000 approximately for your tuition, around 3,800 for your fare. If your fare is just twice a day at 8 pesos and you just go to school for 3 days and you study for 10 months, so 3,000 plus, around 12,000 if your allowance is just 100 pesos a day. So if you think about it, you can't overstay because education costs so much in this country. Even if you are studying in a school with a lower tuition, it's still expensive to send students to school. So huwag kayong magmayabang at feeling arrogante at sabihin, dito muna ako, ayaw mo munang kunin yung subject na to, pangit yung teacher na yun. Okay? And it doesn't mean that you can't shift courses also. The young, actually, one of the luxuries of the young is the luxury to change your mind. Sino na dito ang nakapag-shift? Ako din, nakapag-shift na din ako. And it's okay. But you also have the duty to tell your parents, Mapa, I have a game plan. I will shift, but I will finish it in 4 years. Why again? Because it costs to overextend in college. And the game plan and your parents need to be reassured that even if you are shifting from one course to another, that you know where you are going. It may take you 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I spent 3 years in college preparing for a medical education. 3 years, pre-med po ako at chemistry ako, nag-hirap ako sa physics, muntik na akong bumagsak sa math. And then on my third year, I realized I can't be a doctor. I'd rather be a lawyer. So I took the law exam, and now I'm a lawyer. So it's okay to change your mind, but don't make it very costly for your parents as well. So rule number 1, stay in school. Rule number 2. Rule number 2 is one of my favorite. The long version is, you don't have a right to be stupid. Can you repeat that? You don't have a right to be stupid. Or if you don't have time, like me, because I'm about to miss my flight, I have to be there at 12 o'clock. The shorter version is, don't be stupid. Now, why do I say that? You live in an age where you have smartphones. I can see from where I am, you have iPads, you have the radio, you have the TV, you have the internet. There's so much information available for this generation. So if you read and learn one thing a day, you're better off than not reading or not learning anything at all. So use your resources. Now, when you're in the real world, don't be stupid is a very, very important rule. I've worked and supervised with I've supervised a lot of young, yung mga fresh grad, bago lang sa trabaho, and I notice immediately who will succeed in the field and who will not. More often than not, those who will fail are these types of people. Uutusan mo, uy, pakiano naman, gawin mo tong, meron tayong problema, ganito, ganyan. Ang sagot sa'yo, miss or attorney, paano po yun? Ano po yung saan po tayo magsisimula? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a sign of paralysis and lack of resourcefulness. You don't ask, how do I solve the problem? People pay you to solve the problem. And usually the most successful people in the work field are those who say, gawin mo to, and if they think they can do it, kaya ba? The automatic answer is, opo, kaya ko po. And then, taka sa cubicle mo, Lord, paano ko magsisimula? Hindi ko alam. That happens to me, even in my law profession. There are many cases where somebody approaches you, or especially like in the Senate, and somebody would ask you, ma'am, ano po yung tax ganyan? And I was so weak in tax in law school. And I would just say, can't we? Sige po, parang maraming dimension yung kaso niyan. Aralin po natin. Hindi ka nang bubola, but you are also humble enough to accept that you don't know everything. But you have the resources in your hands to learn and solve the problem. So resourcefulness and the ability to find the information to help you succeed. And that's one of my favorite rules, even in the workplace. And I tend to be a very, very strict boss. Medyo nakakatakot ako minsan. But I hope that I am teaching people to survive out there in the real world. So that's the second rule in education. Now the third rule is learn everywhere, which is a little contradictory to my first rule. My first rule was stay in school. The third is learn everywhere. Use every opportunity to learn. And that's why I always tell my students, travel. Start traveling when you are young. Punta kayo sa Tanhay, punta kayo sa Oslo, awit kayo ng konti, punta kayo sa Liluan. Because traveling on the road, that's where you get your best education. And maybe Ivan can affirm that because he travels a lot. Yung pag-scoring siguro kami, sobrang C lang ako, siya super A+, sa traveling. And traveling helps you love your country more. I've been to a lot of places in the Philippines. I've seen so much poverty, I've seen so much injustice. But I've also learned that the Filipino is a great race. And the Philippines is a great country. Right? Do you agree? And when you travel, that's when you learn. Saan ka? Pumunta kami kanina. Very interesting. Tanong about Apeco. Ano lang mag-comment ha? Senate din ako eh. Pumunta kami Apeco, magsusurfing daw. Dala kotse, pumupulo yung kotse. Kasi wala kang pera, so dapat di ba? Para contribute talaga. And we reached a point in our travel where the car could no longer pass through the roads. The roads were very bad, so what did we do? We left the car in a rundown barangay hall. And the car was there when we returned. And the people guarding our car were even asking us, Ma'am, kumain na po ba kayo ng dinner? Ganyan po ang majority ng mga Pilipino. They're that good. They will let you park the car, they don't know you, and they will even offer you food when you get to their place. And why is it important to realize and continue to reaffirm that the Filipinos are good people? Because the Filipinos are going to be the beneficiaries, hopefully, of your work as student leaders and leaders of this country in general. Now, learn everywhere is also very important because it teaches you humility and your purpose in this world. Now, I remember when I was very young, practice as a lawyer in the first year, one of my clients was a farmer who was about to lose his land, a very powerful landowner. And I took the case because our organization could not take the case because our organization did not take cases of just single or of individuals. It had to be an organization of farmers. So naawa ko sa farmer, umiiyak ko sa opisina namin. Sabi ko, ako na lang po ang hahawak ng mga kaso nyo. And when we won the case, the farmer carried to the courtroom 5 kilos of rice. And that was his payment to me. But what he said, and the humility to listen to what he said, was more important and became a defining point in my career. And it became very important to me that we need to constantly educate ourselves as to what are we really doing for this country. What did the farmer say? Sabi niya, Ma'am, noong isang taon, umiiyak po ako sa opisina niyo. At nung sinabi niyo na tatanggapin niyo yung kaso ko, binigay ko po yung buhay ko at nilagay ko sa mga kamay niyo. Ngayon po, na nanalo na tayo at nasa akin na yung lupa, binalik niyo po ang buhay ko sa mga kamay ko. And that has always inspired me. And that's your God. We can't save everyone. We can't solve the problem of poverty. We can't get rid of corruption in one day. But I always say, like 2 weeks ago, I was talking to the lawyers at the Department of Agrarian Reform, an agency which is always criticized for being corrupt, abusive, unjust, etc., etc. And I told the lawyers, you can forget every legal provision I just taught you. But I hope, despite of your age, that you will always have the belief that our job here is to change ourselves and our belief of what we can do for this country, and hopefully just change a single life. If you can change the mind of just one person, then that's important for me, and you would have had the education that you should have in your lifetime. So learn everywhere. Kung nasa bangka kayo, tanungin niyo yung bankero kung ano yung trabaho niya. Kung nasa plaza kayo at naghihintay kayo, tanungin niyo yung sales director. Huwag naman yung mag-usap kayo na matagal, di ba? Nakakairita din yung sa sunod na tao eh. Hoy, huwag kayo mag-chismisan. Bilisan niyo. But learn everywhere. Have the humility to believe that you don't know everything. Ask questions. And I always tell the young people that I supervise in the office, the moment you stop asking why, you die. And it is very common, especially in government, when I hear people say again and again, Ma'am, ganyan talaga eh. Ma'am, ganyan talaga yung sistema. Ma'am, ito-complain ako. Patient ito. Eh, ma'am, ganyan talaga, 64 pa. Why? Always ask why, because the why will lead you to the how can you change this and what can you do. Alright? So learn everywhere. The fourth rule I always tell student leaders, or even my students before when I used to teach pre-law, what is be an ambassador of the Philippines. Okay? Yung isa sabi, Ma'am, tatrabaho kami sa DFA, ambassador agad. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, always be the spokesperson for your country. Now, I've traveled the world and dealt with a lot of people, and it is very sad that there's also a lot of discrimination. And I always say that discrimination is a product of ignorance. Now, when I went to Manila, from galing Dumaguete, nakasakay ng aeroplano, 17 years old na, from talaga, hindi marunong mag-Tagalog, diba? Very common yan. Sinong sobrang galing mag-Tagalog dito? Mahirap, di ba? Except those, the one from Manila. And I met a lot of discrimination also. People asking you, may cable ba sa Dumaguete? Tsaka, meron, no? May internet ba doon? There's always that kind of, those kinds of questions. And when I went to Europe to study, I was asked, where's the Philippines? Can you show me? And it was very, some people ask because of innocence, other people ask because of arrogance. Or you hear the more insulting statements like, oh, the Philippines, the country is so corrupt. Or, oh, the Philippines, you're a nation of prostitutes and domestic helpers. And my answer there is, be an ambassador of the Philippines. Do not fight discrimination with anger. Fight it with education. Always take the opportunity when you are in a cafe, when you are with your classmates, when you are with maybe city people who think that your little tiny town in Samar or Ilocos has no cable or no internet. Tell them, ay meron po. IRC na po ako ng 16. Yung IRC ko ba ngayon? Oh my God, it's so old. Like that, you educate them as to what are facts and what are not facts. And you also learn from them. Because of course, I'm sure all of you have your own prejudices also about other races and about other regions and about other people in the Philippines. Okay? Baka sa inyo dito, saan ka galing? Mindanao. Di ba may gera doon? Tapos sa Cagayan lang pala, walang gera dito. Those kinds of statements are maybe very innocent, but they're also a result of the lack of correct information. So when you go out there, I'm sure a lot of you will be able to deal with people from other countries, deal with people from other regions. Always be an ambassador of the Philippines. Raise the flag up high and love your country. Be able to say what is good about this country, but be also honest about what's not good in this country. Now the last thing I'm going to tell you are, well, 5 words. 4 words that I like for student leaders. First, think. Bago kayo magsalita, mag-isip muna kayo. You will be bombarded with a lot of issues. RH bill, syntax, cybercrime, all these other issues. And if you just react because other people want you to react, then you would have failed as leaders. So the first thing you need to do is to think. And because you're educated, you are in the perfect position to do that well. Second, you listen. That's the most important thing about leaders. Marami sa mga leaders, and if you are talking to non-leaders in college, lagi nila sinasabi, ay, mga bigo yan. Yung palaging sila yung star pag may activity sa university. Tapos kung ano mga projects na nasaksak sa mga bukangan namin. Don't be those kinds of leaders. Ask them first what they want. Okay? Hindi pwede na pumunta ka sa isang grupo at sabihin mo, ito yung dapat natin gagawin. Ito yung dapat gawin, ito yung project natin. That's not the way leadership works. Because you don't have the monopoly of all the solutions. And that's also very important when you go out into the real world. Like for me, I'm a lawyer. And it's so easy for me to approach a client and say, you know, nagawa na tayo ng kontrata, huwag ka na magsalita, ako na gagawa nito. Yung kaso mo, ako nakakawa, huwag ka na magsalita. And if I do that, I will be a failure as a lawyer. Because any profession, the most important thing is that you will be a teacher. That you will help people understand why that profession matters and what that profession can contribute to their lives. So meron mga pol-sci dito, huwag niyo isipin na dahil pol-sci ka, automatic maging abogado ka. Kung meron ditong mga nurses at bio-major, huwag niyo isipin na talagang kailangan mo lang maging doctor. Ngayon pala, isipin niyo, bawat isa sa inyo, dapat maging teacher din kayo. Learn, whatever you learn in college, you use it to teach other people. Okay? Think, listen, most important, speak up. Okay? Kanina, sa greeting, sino yung pinaka-bibo dito kanina? Hello? Ito ang group ito. Don't be afraid to speak up. And don't be afraid to disagree. Okay? You will realize that as members of the youth sector, you will be bombarded with a lot of stereotypes. 1, the Filipinos are corrupt. Don't just hide in the background and say, oh nga, corrupt nga natin. Do something and say, hindi ako corrupt. And when you're educated, when you have enough qualifications, you can resist stereotypes such as corruption. For me, it's so easy to be rich if I am corrupt. When you're in the law profession, especially when you are in government, especially when you work for a politician, it's so easy to get rich if you're corrupt. But because I am qualified, I am confident that I'm qualified, I can say no. And I can also say that if I know this, or if I discover that my own boss is corrupt, I can leave him, and I know that maybe in a few days' time I can find another job because I know I'm qualified. Resist corruption by equipping yourself with enough qualifications to step away. Okay? So that's why people will ask me, bakit hindi siya nagtatrabaho? Eh, kasi naniniwala ako na hindi siya corrupt eh. Kasi kung corrupt siya, umalis na ako. And I think I'm very lucky to be in that position. And hopefully also you guys, you will become the kind of people who will not say, never say, ay trabaho lang, walang personalan. You should be defined by your work. You will discover later on in life that 8 hours, at least 8 hours of your daily life will be your work. So you can't say, trabaho lang, walang personalan. You will be defined largely by the work that you do. So if you're the kind of student leader who's uncreative, then you will be the uncreative person. If you are corrupt and you steal from the coffers of the contributions of the student in your university, then most likely you will be a corrupt person when you join the workforce. Don't be that kind of person. Resist the stereotypes. And I'm glad that the first speaker a while ago said, you lead. And when I say lead, don't just think of the big picture. Start your own little revolutions. What little revolutions can the young do? You can't make laws now, right? You can't go and debate whatever law is good or bad. You can change the justice system, but you can't do and engage in little revolutions. For example, malapit na po ang eleksyon. Sa elections, merong tinatawag na poster area. Pero makikita natin ang daming mga kandidato na magpo-post saan-saan. Lagi kong sinasabi sa mga bata, this election, tatanggalin ko yan, yung mga wala sa poster area. Because if we can't have leaders who can follow a rule as simple as post your posters in a certain area, then maybe they have no business leading us as well. So that's a micro-revolution, that's a little revolution. Another revolution that the youth can do. We have plastic bans in the city. Don't just say, okay, plastic ban, so manghihingi ako ng 10 papel. At doon ko ilalagay yung sinashop ko. Bring your own bag. Love the environment. It's a very simple micro-revolution that you can do. Now, if you don't agree over certain things that you understand, post something on your Facebook. Write a song, dance, or post something. Post a black picture on your Facebook wall. Activism should be redefined. Hindi dahil sinasabi lang niya, ay, mga aktivista yung mga taga yung pinaglalakad sa daan. That's not the only form of activism. If you want real activism and if you want leadership for change, do it in a way that is most comfortable to you. Kung ayaw nang mainit, kasi, iitim ako, sayang yung mga whitening products, or maging frizzy yung hair ko, don't do it. If you want to lead in a way that is comfortable to you, and don't force yourself to be some other person. Alright? And those are the very simple things that I'm going to impart to you. And hopefully, in the future, I'm going to see most of you take positions of leadership and continuing little revolutions. When you have your lunch later on, ask your friends, what can we start today? Okay? When you have your lunch today, cross over. Don't just stay with your schoolmates. Talk to the other people from other regions because their places would be a good place to start a journey or a lifetime of traveling. Okay? At syempre, kung friends na kayo, kung magka-travel sila dito sa Dumaguete, sa bahay nila patirahin. At kung sila magka-travel sa Ilocos, sa bahay rin. Diba? Okay yun. Good way to start. And you start young. Okay? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Attorney Golda. So we'll take 3 questions. So, anyone?
Anyone? Speak up.
There, we have a brave one. Can anyone give him a mic? Oh, he's not asking. So, anyone? Oh, we have one here. You? Someone raised her hand. You guys. Remember, speak up. Any comments or would you want to say anything that you would like Attorney Golda to comment on? Anyone? Who would like to go first? Oh, there, we have one. Can anyone give her a mic? Oh, I said after her, you can ask. Go.
Ma'am Graf, good morning po. I'm Diana from Tacloban City.
Hello.
Okay. Ano po yung pwede po ma-share na advocacy for the youth? Today. Yes. And tomorrow.
Wow.
Thank you.
Advocacy for the youth. Kung hindi ka bumoto, huwag magreklamo. Diba? It's very difficult to win elections in this country without money. But it's also very difficult to find yourself in a country where the youth needs to be paid to participate in elections. Okay? So vote. Exercise your right to vote. Dumaan ako sa stage ng buhay ko, 3 elections hindi ako bumoto. Because I was so jaded. And I said, if everyone is like me, ayokong bumoto kasi wala akong tiwala ng mga swapang na to. Kung hindi bumoto yung mga matitino at yung may mga vision, sino magboboto? Yung nabibili. And if you want to pursue advocacy in good elections, good and clean elections, you should also educate the people around you. Your neighbors, maybe the pedicab driver, maybe the jeepney driver, educate them kung bakit importante na matinong yung mga leaders natin. Okay? That's a good advocacy. Environmentalism. Very easy advocacy and very important for the youth. Marami akong mga estudyante noon, nung nag-aaral ako, nang natuturo ako, tinanong ko, sino nakakita ng waterfalls? Okay, in a class, sino hindi pa nakita ng waterfalls? Okay, travel, find a waterfall in 2013. If you can't take care, if we will not take care of this world, baka naabot na ng isang conference na wala na nakakita ng waterfalls. So, ang cost naman, full yung waterfalls. I promise. Yes. Okay?
I would just like to clarify about something because you said a while ago that leaders should do something that or should act on things that they are comfortable with. So I would just like to clarify, would that not be settling in their comfort zones? Because as leaders, we should always go out to our comfort zone to extend our territory, to always grow. So I would just like to clarify, how can we do things that we are comfortable with, but not settling on our comfort zone?
Okay, that's a very good question actually. When I say that activism should be in a way that you're comfortable with, perhaps I mean it as a start. Kung gusto mong maging aktivista, magsimula ka dun sa familiar sa'yo. So when I started being an activist, I started writing because that was what I was good at. I would write in the college paper, I would write for the organization, or I would lecture. But yes, there will come a time when your form of activism will require you to step out of your comfort zone. Very clear story. Isang kampanya namin noon required me to walk around in EDSA. You know where EDSA is, right? It's always on the news, it's traffic, it's mainit. I was in my court outfit and I was in my heels. And I walked. And I began to talk to a labor union worker and a farmer and I asked them, because uncomfortable talaga ako, hindi ako bagay maglakad dun. Diba? Pero ayoko maglakad. That's not the way I express my anger and frustration in society. And then I asked them, bakit po kayo naglalakad? Di ba po kung nag-rally kayo, hindi naman kayo pinakikinggan ng mga leaders natin? And the farmer leader and the union worker told me that, ma'am, we do this because our people, the people walking behind you, that's the only form of activism they know. Kung maglakad sila sa daan, hindi naman sila pwede mag-argue sa law, hindi naman sila pwede mag-appear sa Senate at makipagdebate sa mga senador. That's the only form of activism they know. And I stepped out of my comfort zone and did it with them. Connectivity, sabi nga ni Sir kanina, di ba? You should also be able to empathize to other forms of activism. And maybe sometimes you step out of your comfort zone and you realize that you like it too. Okay? Creative activism nga. Na may narinig nga ako, I was in a conference of design activists, mga computer geeks. Tapos sabi nila, ano yung activism nila? As simple as putting a black picture on their Facebook wall. Kasi comfortable sila doon. Tapos ako, parang kayo hindi naman bagay sa akin ko kasi hindi naman marunong drawing, mga ganun-ganun, hindi naman ako creative. But I try to step out of the comfort zone. So that's a very good question. Sometimes you need to. And I think the greatest obstacle there is fear. Kung natatakot ka na mag-work ba yung mga suggestion mo, at matatakot ka lang lagi and you're afraid to make mistakes, then maybe you can't effect change. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be stupid, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. Very good question. Yes.
Last question.
This question siguro is relevant to your profession, madam. Kasi ay parang scared na ako sa nangyayari sa atin ngayon sa Pilipinas, hindi lang sa corruption, pati rin sa justice system. Ang gusto kong itanong, kadalasan sa mga kaso natin ngayon, crime, pati sa mga bata, yung tawag natin yung violation, yung 9344 sa CICL. Bakit po? Kasi meron tayong batas na yung tinatawag natin, pinapabilis dapat yung kaso ng mga bata. A lot of cases na hindi pa na-resolve, ilang taon na. Saan po ba ang mali sa justice system natin? Sa mga judges, prosecutors? Ano po ang yung experience na parang yung ibig mo sabihin yun, magaling Tagalog eh. Yung ano po ang pinagdadaanan yung kahirapan o struggle dyan sa justice system na yan natin bilang lawyer. Kasi po ay, yun din ang gusto namin malaman sa Youth Development Program. Nakadalasang biktima dyan, kabataan din. Ano po?
Saan ang problema sa justice system? And why is it we're so frustrated? Ito lang, may kaso ako, 7 years na nakakulong yung kliyente ko. After 7 years, acquitted siya. Hindi pala siya ang tumatay. And for somebody handling that case for 4 years, it's very frustrating. Where's the problem? Sometimes it's with the judge. Sometimes it's because of the fact that we don't have enough courts. Sometimes the opponent is so powerful that they can just tell the judge not to hear the case. Marami talagang source ng problema. And I admit that we cannot solve every problem right away or as fast as possible. So we just need to try our best to work with the system when the system can be remedied and maybe against the system when it can. Sa akin, I am in a privileged position kasi pwede akong mag-suggest ng ways of speeding up cases, especially for children, kasi nasa policy department ako. Now, for the youth, you can find other venues. I know it's going to be a very difficult, even bloody situation. You'll find yourself sitting in a room and say, alam mo, dapat magkano na lang tayo, organize na lang tayo ng basketball league kasi yung mga problema iniisip natin, sobrang Okay. But I think right now, this venue is not the position, is not the venue to get real solutions. There are solutions, but not all of them will work. But I think this venue and that question is, I think, a source of inspiration for the young leaders here to try and be more creative with solutions. Minsan may mga sistema talaga na ang hirap, it's so hard to challenge them. On the second year of my practice, isang labor case, sinabihan ako ng judge, ma'am, sigurado ka ng panalo, 300,000 lang. Ito na po yung decision. May draft decision na sinabi sa akin at binigay sa akin. And because it was so against me, it was painful for my clients, I had to say no. And I had to explain to my clients, the only way we're going to win this is if we pay. Now, we couldn't pay, and I wouldn't pay. And it cost the jobs of my clients. And up to now, when I think about it, there's, of course, it's unavoidable if you feel a little guilty kasi pwede mo namang ipanalo kung mag-contribute kayo ng bayad kayo. But you'll be contributing to a Philippines that will shrink and that will die. So refuse and step back and maybe find another solution. Okay? What solution did we find? We filed a case against the judge. And the judge is facing a case now, and it's giving him so much trouble. We can't hear cases. It was a very dangerous move, and we continue to, and if you do right, you continue to face threats. Nakakatakot po gumawa ng tama sa isang sistema na maraming gumagawa at kumikita sa paggagawa ng mali. So just be careful, but do not live in fear. Because if we live in fear, we can never change this country.